Senate Bill 50, the clerk will read.
Senators Britt, Daniel, and Settle. Senate Bill 50, a bill to be entitled Freedom to Carry NC, the General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
Gentleman from Beaufort, Representative Kedwell, is recognized to debate the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 50, very good bill. Matter of fact, it's so good, you know, most of you run a bill and it goes over to the Senate and they make changes and send it back. In this particular case, the Senate just took the bill right after I wrote it, took it over there, put their name on it, and sent it back. So I do appreciate that they enjoyed that bill that much. And Mr. Speaker, I'd like to congratulate you for recognizing it was a non-controversial bill. I've actually heard very little pushback on this. And I note you also saved the best for last. This bill, what it does is it allows people to constitutionally carry a firearm without obtaining a permit from the government to exercise their God-given right to defend themselves. It does not change who may buy a firearm. It does not change who may transfer a firearm. It does not change where or when you can carry a firearm. It simply allows people to carry without getting a permission slip from the government. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Wake, Representative Rubin, rise?
To debate the bill.
Gentleman's recognized to debate the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I was just thinking I appreciate the levity that we had earlier today because it shows how connected we are even when we have bills that I think are potentially more divisive to us than the turtle bill that we had before. And unfortunately, notwithstanding what Representative Kidwell said about this not being controversial, I do have to disagree because I think that this bill is the wrong path for us. And I know that there are profound, strong feelings on both sides of the aisle about the best approach for guns, but we don't have to go this far. And I think this bill does not help the people that we represent because it is dangerous, it is unnecessary, and it is deeply unpopular. To start with, the bill is dangerous. Study after study has shown, and the states are laboratories of democracy, so we don't have to guess, studies have shown that permitless concealed carry increases violence and deaths from firearms. You can look at the Stanford study that showed that states with permitless concealed carry see a 13 to 15% increase in violent crime over the next decade. Or newer, the Johns Hopkins study from 2022 showed that firearm assaults were 9.5% higher than would otherwise have been predicted across the 34 states that relaxed their concealed carry permit requirements, specifically live fire safety training. And in West Virginia is the worst example, where after they repealed their permit requirement for concealed real lives that are forever impacted by a bill like this. And that is the future that we're buying. It's more violence against real people. And let's place it in the larger context. Just a couple days ago, the New York Times had an article about a new study using Centers for Disease Control data, which is the gold standard, that states with stronger laws on gun safety see gun violence rates 2.5 times lower than states with more lax gun laws. And of course, in North Carolina, for its part, already has the 13th highest rate of gun homicides in the United States. So we're starting from a place where it's a problem here, and this bill, as these other studies have shown, will make it worse. And we already see that weakened gun safety laws here have impacted these numbers, but I recognize the debate on both sides, and I just want to focus on this bill. Because wherever you are on the other bills that we've done or not done on gun safety, we don't have to do this. We don't have to go this far. And that's where I go to the fact that the bill is unnecessary. The permitting process that we have is not burdensome, and it is common sense. It requires basic safety, live fire training, a background check, requires you to be age 21, all common sense things for concealed carry of a handgun. And if that process is imperfect, if you think it's not working, if you think it's too slow, I will be glad to partner with you. I think you would have hands up all over this room to partner with you, to improve that process, to make it efficient, to make it better. If you don't think it's good, we can make it better without eliminating it. And then the last thing is that this bill is deeply unpopular. So 77% of North Carolinians oppose this bill and think you should get a permit before carrying a concealed weapon. That's one poll. The Elon study was similar. Only 34% of North Carolinians support dropping the concealed carry requirement. That is a profoundly low amount of support for this bill, but it's not a surprise when you think about the things that I said that led me to this point. So I just want to conclude with this. When I was a prosecutor, there was one of the judges here in Raleigh. When he would take a guilty plea from a defendant, he would advise him of all his rights, and he would walk through, and he would tell him all the consequences that could happen. And at the very last second, the judge would say, you know what? Even in this moment, you can still change your mind. It is not too late. Right now, here and now, you can take it all back. You don't have to do this unless you want to. Do you want to proceed? And I would just ask that to you, even in this moment, all the way on the House floor, in this moment, you can still change your mind. You don't have to vote for this bill. It doesn't go to all of the other gun issues that we talk about and that we debate about. We don't have to go this far. And I would urge you and I would ask you, coming to you as a friend, not to do it. Thank you.
What purpose? Members of the gallery, there's no applause and there's no comments to be made, and the chair will simply clear the gallery, but as always, the chair doesn't wish to do that. And so if you can sit here and listen to the debate and remain silent, then fine. There are members on both sides of this issue who are elected by the people of the state to debate it, and it's going to be well debated. So again, the chair would ask you to refrain from any applause or making any sort of noise within the House chamber and respect the members on both sides of the aisle here as they debate this bill. If we're going to make noise, the chair will just have to clear the gallery. For what purpose does the lady from Orange, Representative Price, rise?
To debate the bill.
Ladies recognized to debate the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understand that individuals begin handling and using firearms or guns at an early age, even during childhood. Even my mother, my late mother, she was very young when she asked her father to teach her how to use a gun. And I understand that anyone can become skilled in using guns by the age of 18, and perhaps because you grew up on a farm where you needed it, or your family liked to hunt, or even in military training. Nevertheless, we know from scientific and medical research that the human brain is still developing until the mid-20s, somewhere around the age of 25. And as legislators, we are responsible for the safety of our communities, and we should seek to assure that young people reach a certain level of maturity before being allowed to carry and use a firearm without supervision. A person should be able to discern when to use a firearm or a weapon. And I know that some people, you don't feel that, believe that a firearm is a weapon, but it does kill. Being a sharpshooter is different from assessing a situation and knowing when to pull out a gun. We are in the process right now of restructuring some of our laws to limit the sale and use of vaping products, kratom, alcohol, and the like to people who are 21 and older. The same should apply to concealed carry of firearms. I therefore ask that you vote no on this bill in the effort to promote reasonable ownership and the use of firearms, thereby decreasing unnecessary deaths by young adults in our communities. Thank you.
What purpose does the gentleman from Orange, Representative Wansi, rise?
To debate the bill.
Gentleman's recognized to debate the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, in this building we talk a lot about the critical importance of public safety, about the importance of protecting our communities, and about the importance of supporting our law enforcement. And yet, we have this bill that threatens all three of those principles. During my time on the town council, I had the awesome privilege to get to know my police chief, and he was very transparent, open with us. He invited every one of us on the council to visit with the department, to visit with officers, to visit with their staff, and to go on ride-alongs, just to get some sense of the experience of what they deal with on a day-to-day basis. Those experiences gave me an even greater appreciation for what these men and women do for our communities every single day, protecting and serving. Now, when I read this bill, I thought of my community. I thought about the people, and I thought about our law enforcement. This bill would make their jobs a whole lot harder and put them in even greater risk. The concealed carry permit requirement is about one thing: public safety. It ensures that 1, people know the law. 2, it tells folks what they must do when law enforcement approaches them. And then 3, it tells folks how to handle a firearm safely and properly. With this bill, we will have a series of people carrying firearms who won't know the law and who won't know how to behave or act around law enforcement. Think about that for a second. Think about an 18-year-old who grows up without someone in their life who takes the time to train them, teach them on how to properly handle a firearm. And now, under this bill, this 18-year-old would have the ability to have a firearm and not be required to train on how to safely use the gun or required to know the law. Is that safe? Under current law on concealed carries, a person must disclose that they have a gun on their person when law enforcement approaches. And if a person chooses not to get the concealed carry permit and go through that process, how's that person going to know what to do, how to behave? That's not a safe situation for our law enforcement. Other good information a person learns in the process of getting a concealed carry permit includes the fact that you cannot be under the influence of an impairing substance such as alcohol while carrying a firearm. You can also learn information about the law barring certain individuals from carrying firearms, like someone convicted of a crime. The information provided in the course of getting a concealed carry permit is all in an effort to maintain public safety. The safety of the people around them and safety whenever that person may come into contact with a law enforcement officer. In other words, the concealed carry permit requirement is common sense. It's a common sense precaution that anyone wanting a concealed carry goes through. I urge everyone in this chamber, think about the danger this legislation poses to our public, to the people, and to law enforcement. Please reject this bill and vote no. Thank you.
Representative Morey, the chair understands the lady has an amendment. We'll go ahead and take up the amendment if the lady wants to. Representative Morey is recognized to send for the amendment. Clerk will read.
Representative Morey moves to amend the bill.
Lady from Durham, Representative Morey is recognized to debate the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this bill has several sections, and when it came back from the Senate, there were new sections added, which for any victims who are law enforcement family, EMS, that they would be compensated if there was a death because of a firearm. What this amendment does, I like those provisions in the bill. I usually don't like to enhance criminal penalties, but that's fine. This is simple. It takes out the first section of the bill. It takes out the part about repealing the necessity for carrying concealed permit. The rest of the bill's fine. I just ask you to vote. Take out the most controversial, dangerous part of this bill, and let's compensate families who are victims of violent gun crime.
The gentleman from Beaufort, Representative Kidwell, is recognized to debate the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, this basically just guts out the bill. All it would do at that point is increase penalties that my esteemed colleague says she does not like to increase, but that would be the only thing left in the bill. I ask for your red vote on that bill, on the amendment.
Further discussion or debate on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All those in favor will vote aye. All those opposed will vote no. The clerk will open the vote. Clerk will lock the machine and record the vote. 46 having voted in the affirmative and 61 in the negative. The amendment fails. We are now back on the bill. For what purpose does the gentleman from Guilford, Representative Quick, arise?
To debate the bill.
The gentleman is recognized to debate the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, how do we think this is a good idea? As a pastor, there's a particular set of clothes that I hate, or dread rather, reaching into my closet to get. That's a black suit, a white shirt, black tie, and a black robe. Because most often when I put that set of clothes on, I'm going to eulogize someone in a funeral. And all too often, I've had to put that uniform on, black suit, white shirt, black tie, and a black robe, to eulogize someone who has been killed by senseless violence, most often by the use of a firearm. The thought often invades my mind as I stand to eulogize someone killed by violence as to how senseless it is that I stand in that place. Every time I look into the face of a grieving mother, a sobbing father, or a confused sibling, when someone has been killed by senseless violence, the thought always invades my mind how senseless it is. I'm blessed to represent the 90,000 people in North Carolina House District 58, and I take delight in representing all of them. But as an African American male, will you please allow me this allowance to speak to the detriment of firearm violence in the African American community. Statistics tell us that African Americans are disproportionately impacted by gun violence, with higher rates of homicide and suicide than other populations. Some studies put the figure at 11.5 times more likely for an African American male to experience gun violence than any other population. If we pass this legislation, I am confident that there will be more times when I have to reach into that dreaded part of my closet and put on black suit, white shirt, black tie, black robe, and stand before a grieving family. Because given the state's stamp of approval to an untrained 18-year-old who's not yet fully mature, that the state says it's okay to conceal a weapon just because you can, will never be a good idea. But let's talk not just about those who perish from gun violence. Gun violence has a tremendous impact because not everyone who's shot dies. There are those who are permanently paralyzed, and that has an economic impact on our state, particularly for those who are uninsured and permanently paralyzed. Let's talk about the kid who is 18 years old, 19 years old, who is depressed. His girlfriend just broke up with him. Her boyfriend just broke up with her. And now she doesn't know what to do. But the state says you can have proximity to a weapon, that your 18-year-old untrained mind can now have proximity to a weapon. And studies show that proximity to a weapon is a contributing cause to gun death and gun violence. Ladies and gentlemen, as Representative Rubin said, we don't have to do this. Please, let's not do this. Please lessen the times that I have to reach into that dreaded part of my closet and get a black suit, a white shirt, a black tie, and a black robe. Please vote no.
For what purposes, the gentleman from New Hanover, Representative Davis, rise.
To make some comments.
Gentleman's recognized to debate the bill.
Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I don't normally read from a script, but I'm going to because I want to make sure that I say correctly what it is I'd like to say. If you'll bear with me, Mr. Speaker. We all here on the right side of the aisle strongly support the Second Amendment. I stand here today to voice my concerns for the rights of the law-abiding citizens who follow our gun laws, particularly the hundreds of thousands of canceled permit holders today. We ask these people to expose private details about their health care, provide fingerprints to the state government, comply with an educational process, and meet a zero tolerance on any amount of alcohol while carrying. Now we are saying, too bad, and we're sorry, you really shouldn't have done all that. Ladies and gentlemen, there are three options here, in my opinion, that I just ask you to think about. One, fix the bill and say if you're going to carry a concealed firearm, you must at least comply with the current set of rules. Give the government your fingerprints, your mental health records, and no alcohol if you carry. Two, fix this bill by saying to the hundreds of thousands who did comply with respect that we respect your rights to and mandate the return and deletion of all the personal information to the lawful unconcealed carry permit holders that gave this information previously. Or three, ignore the rights of those who have respectfully and honorably followed the concealed carry laws and pacify those whose voices who want a different sort of rules. This is not about the right to carry. This is about the rights of those who have followed our laws, and now we protect those who have set out an example of responsibility and safety to others to emulate. Thank you very much, and I just ask you to consider those things. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What purpose does the lady from Durham, Representative Moyer, rise?
To speak on the bill.
Ladies recognized to debate the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you read this bill itself speaks about the harm it will cause. The first part eradicates the need for a permit to carry a concealed weapon, yet the rest of the bill addresses the irreparable damage that will come. It increases compensation for families of slain law enforcement, EMS. It provides scholarships for children whose family members, officers will die. This bill is like making heroin legal and then putting money into addiction and burial expenses. This bill is a bill too far on where we have gone with permitting over and over where you can have carried concealed weapons. We allowed carrying concealed weapons to go to places where there can be religious services. Then we said, okay, you carry concealed weapons, parks and playgrounds. You can carry concealed weapons where they serve alcohol. And this year, okay, you can take them to private schools. This is going too far to say, you don't need a permit, just put a carry concealed in your pocket when you turn 18. What are we going to say in 5 years when we look at the statistics of law enforcement officers' deaths who have doubled or maybe tripled because of what we're doing today? We're going to allow 18-year-olds to put a loaded gun in their pocket, to carry it to malls, athletic events, concerts, kids whose brains are not fully developed, who are impulsive, and kids who see another child put their hand in their pocket thinking they're reaching for a gun when they are reaching for their iPhone. This bill puts bystanders at risk, the public at risk, law enforcement at risk. We know the accuracy rate for law enforcement who have 840 hours of training. They hit their mark 1 out of 3 times. Can you imagine a teenager who has no safety training on how to operate a gun? Because we're not going to require a permit. It is argued that this bill is about constitutional rights of law-abiding citizens. No constitutional right is absolute. Free speech has limitations. You can't threaten public officials. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Freedom to assemble does not mean crowds can engage in violent protest. And the U.S. Supreme Court has said the Second Amendment must have certain regulations are presumptively lawful to help protect public safety. Today we are debating a reasonable, sound public safety requirement. If you carry a gun concealed, you must have basic training and a permit. The public doesn't want us to pass this law. Law enforcement does not want us to pass this law. Common sense says do not pass this legislation. There is one guarantee if this bill becomes law: senseless, preventable gun deaths will rise. Please check your mind and your heart and vote no.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Cabarrus, Representative Echeverria, rise?
To debate the bill.
Gentleman's recognized to debate the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That is the Second Amendment. It was ratified on December 15th, 1791, as a part of the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution. They are of extreme importance to our continued freedom. Those amendments guarantee fundamental rights such as the freedom of speech, religion, press, assembly, and petition. They limit excessive government control, including protections against unreasonable searches and seizure and cruel and unusual punishments. They establish due process, fair trials, protections against self-incrimination. They reserve power to the states and the people. The framers of the Constitution believed that armed American citizens are essential to preventing tyranny and protecting our liberties. I support Senate Bill 50. In fact, I'm a primary sponsor of SB50, which was a constitutional carry bill filed by Representative Kidwell. This bill further ensures that Carolinians can exercise their Second Amendment rights, which include both owning and carrying firearms. The absolute language of shall not be infringed in our Constitution is the strongest prohibition on earth against any government action that would limit this right. Now, those who oppose this bill will mention a few statistics, but I want to share the single most important statistic that this bill addresses. However, before I share that statistic, I want to mention the people this bill does not cover. Seeing that rights to keep and bear arms are constitutionally inseparable. If a person cannot own a firearm, they cannot bear a firearm. So this bill does not make North Carolina more dangerous. So who is not covered by this bill? The people who cannot legally own a gun, felons. Individuals convicted of a felony are generally prohibited from owning a firearm. Individuals with misdemeanor convictions involving domestic violence are prohibited from owning firearms. Those subject to a court order restraining them from harassing, stalking, or threatening an intimate partner or child are prohibited from owning a firearm. Individuals adjudicated as mentally ill or who have been committed to a mental institution are prohibited from owning a firearm. Illegal aliens are prohibited from owning a firearm. Individuals who have received a dishonorable discharge from the armed forces are barred from owning a firearm. Those who have renounced their U.S. citizenship are prohibited from owning firearms. Persons who are fugitives from justice cannot own a firearm. Those who are unlawful users of or addicted to any controlled substance are prohibited from owning a firearm. North Carolina law prohibits individuals convicted of certain alcohol-related offenses like habitual impaired driving from owning firearms. Those with a pending felony or certain misdemeanor charges involving domestic violence can be temporarily barred from owning a firearm. So not often here do we debate the actual subject. The subject here is carrying a firearm. Nothing in this bill changes anything for those without the right or who have lost the right to own or purchase a firearm. Those we know are dangerous are not empowered by this bill one iota. Now, opponents of the bill will tell stories that horrify and should horrify everyone. They will cite studies and statistics by organizations that support their position. They will share absolutely heartbreaking events. However, they won't mention that about half of North Carolina homes have a firearm, or that minority gun ownership is at an all-time high. I would bet everything that Jim Crow would love for minorities to have to ask for permission to purchase or carry their firearm, but Jim Crow is not the law anymore. However, the statistic they will never mention is the statistical fact, the undisputable fact that 100% of law-abiding U.S. citizens have the right to keep and bear arms. That is the statistic that matters most today, 100%. 100% of law-abiding citizens have the right to keep and bear arms, and that right shall not be infringed. So I hope that today we stand with and we defend the 100% of U.S. law-abiding citizens. Today has less to do with our opinions and more to do with about this is a right that we have in this nation. I ask for you to vote yes on this bill.
Well, purpose, the lady from Guilford, Representative Clark Rice.
Speak to the bill.
Ladies recognized to debate the bill.
Thank you, sir. For past gun bills, I have risen to talk about statistics and facts and testimonials and anecdotes from law enforcement. Today, I'm going to stand to tell my story. I don't tell my story, especially not in this public of an environment, so please give me a few minutes of your grace. It's going to be very hard for me to do so, but it is very applicable to this bill that I must tell my story. And I will pause because my story is about both suicide and homicide by guns. And if that is triggering for anyone in this room, I give you the grace and virtual hug to leave because it is very triggering for us going through it. Because you see, we are all in this group that we don't want to be a part of and we didn't ask to be a part of, but we all walk alone our journey of grief and recovery. And so today, I will briefly tell you my story. I once had a friend named Cy. I grew up with him in the summers in Lake Toxaway, where his family was from Atlanta, mine was from Asheville. We met up in the summer and we swam and we fished and we tubed and we hiked and did everything that teenagers do in these beautiful summer months that North Carolina gives us. And you see, I have a twin brother, and so all of his friends are considered my brothers. And I was so excited when my friend and brother Cy told me he was going to Chapel Hill like I was. Our freshman year at Chapel Hill, I lived on Hinton James in South Campus. He lived in North Campus. He pledged a fraternity. We didn't cross paths much, but he did come to my birthday dinner on Franklin Street in April. And the last thing he said to me when he left was, "I love you, sis." That was the last thing he said to me because my law-abiding friend, brother, good guy with the gun, 2 weeks later, the week before our exams, took his gun, walked across UNC's campus at night, and took his life in the Arboretum. And a groundskeeper found him the next morning. And I live with extreme survivor's guilt. Because I was there. I could have helped him had he called me. Why did I not know? Why did I not see that he was struggling? Why did I not ask the questions? Why did he not ask for help? He is a good guy with a gun, and he was in a very bad temporary spot. So this is why this bill is so triggering for me. And this is why I was in every committee hearing for House Bill 5 and Senate Bill 50. And this is why we held a press conference as soon as it passed on the Senate side. Because it's not just about bad guys with guns. This is not a black and white situation. It affects us all. 4 years later, again on UNC's campus, I lost my dear friend Eve Carson to homicide, okay? She was a beautiful individual, student body president. I met her my junior year working on advocacy on campus. She would turn 40 this year, just like I did. She was horrifically murdered on UNC's campus. Wrong time, wrong place. And we forever lost a beautiful angel, okay? 2 totally different stories that I'm traumatized by. Suicide with a good guy with a gun. Homicide with 2 very bad guys with a gun. But the commonality in their stories is that my friend Cy was 19. Eve Carson was murdered by 2 men, 17 and 21. And this is the issue with this bill, is lowering this age to 18. Do you not remember when you're 18? We are prone and so susceptible to peer pressure. We are hot-headed. We are emotional. We don't know how to control our emotions. We are not yet mature enough to handle ourselves So yes, we aren't kids anymore, but right, we're certainly not the adults that can handle a deadly firearm if we're not trained responsibly, which some people are through their fathers, but otherwise this process would help train them and vet them and make sure that they know how to handle a firearm. So yes, I stand here today because of Cy and Eve. And my children should be tubing this summer with Cy's kids. And Eve Carson should be a mother, but they're not. And I will live with this survivor's guilt, and I have to speak out today because this bill goes too far. Too far. Please, please, I beg of you, for Cy and for Eve, don't do this. It goes too far, too much. Please.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Catawba, Representative Adams, rise?
To debate the bill.
Gentleman is recognized to debate the bill.
Recently, we had a mass shooting in Catawba County in my district. There were over 100 people involved. After the fact, of course, I had contact with law enforcement and I talked to them about what the situation was, and it's believed that it was gang violence. Law enforcement told me that everybody there was armed. Everybody had a gun either on their person or in their car. I asked them, I said, did anybody have a concealed carry permit? Absolutely not. No, they're criminals. They don't need permits. They do whatever they please. This is not about that. This is about allowing law-abiding citizens their constitutional rights. 29 states have done this. 29 states have adopted constitutional carry. In fact, we're very close to 50% of the country, the population is under constitutional carry. This is really not going to affect criminal behavior. This is going to benefit law-abiding citizens. And by law-abiding citizens having the ability to carry, you actually have a suppressing effect on criminal behavior. So I'm going to support this bill. This is an aspirational bill. And talking about people under 18 years old, I've owned firearms since I was 11 years old. Most of my friends have owned firearms when I was that age. We're part of the baby boom generation. Our parents were the World War II veterans. They taught us about these things, and that's what we really need to do, is we need to teach people how to responsibly own firearms, and that bill's coming. I will support this bill, and I hope you consider doing the same.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Guilford, Representative Quick, rise?
To briefly debate the bill a second time.
Gentleman is recognized to debate the bill a second time.
Ladies and gentlemen, everybody is a law-abiding citizen until they're not. Everyone is a law-abiding citizen until they're not. You can't tell what pressures will push an 18-year-old who has the state's stamp of approval to conceal a firearm to cross that line from law-abiding citizen to not law-abiding citizen. The pressures on 18-year-olds are not the same as when we were younger. This is not looking back with revisionist history. Kids now have mental health crises. Kids now have pressures that we didn't have to think of. When I was in school, no one thought about a school shooting. We're thinking about the football game. But now kids have to be concerned about, and we have to drill our children on what to do in the event that someone comes into your school with a weapon. And if we pass this bill, we are opening the door potentially, for more of our children to have to endure the horrors of being locked in their classroom because one of their classmates, 18 years old, had the state of North Carolina's stamp of approval to go and get a weapon and conceal it and walk into school and get retribution on something that we back in our day never had to think about. Everyone's a law-abiding citizen until they're not. That's not a risk I'm willing to take. Please vote no.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Beaufort, Representative Kidwell, rise?
Speak for the second time on the bill.
Gentleman is recognized to debate the bill a second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As my colleague, Representative Echeverria, read earlier, the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution, I want to dive a little deeper into that. A well-regulated militia. At the time this document was written, militia was anybody above the age of majority. People today will want to say, well, that's the military. Not when this document was written. Being necessary to the security of a free state. Security was, in the minds of our founders, a tyrannical government, the ability to take on a predatory animal on either 4 legs or 2. That's security. The rights of the people to keep and bear arms. To keep and bear. That means to have and to hold. To possess and keep them on your person. The Supreme Court has ruled that's what bear means. To have them with you. Arms. Ladies and gentlemen, this document did not limit strictly to firearms. This document said arms. Trench Cox, one of the little-known founders, said every implement of the battlefield is the right of the American people, and I trust God will keep it that way. The courts have ruled that any arm that is bearable falls within this document. Last shall not be infringed. I think that means the same thing today as it did back then. This book was written, or this document was written, as bounds against the government, not the people. Matter of fact, the state of North Carolina held out for the Second Amendment before they would ratify the Constitution, because North Carolina felt we specifically needed to protect the Second Amendment, or the ability to keep and bear arms. That's what they stood and fought for. United States Supreme Court, District of Columbia versus Heller. That document, that court order held that American citizens have a personal right. That it was not a militia, it was not to be restricted. The United States Supreme Court in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Buren held that you could not put unreasonable restriction and you could not have arbitrary reasoning for not allowing people to keep and bear arms. Another interesting tidbit, fastest growing demographic of people purchasing firearms today, women, for self-protection. 29 states currently have constitutional carry. 1 has always had it, Vermont. They've never had a restriction whatsoever about carrying a gun. I heard a lot of statistics here today. Some of those statistics are cherry-picked. Some of them are based on results from organizations that are basically anti-gun to begin with. I'm going to give you some statistics. 83% of states with permitless carry have homicide rates below the national average. 84% of states have lower violent crime rates than they did prior to permitless carry. It's interesting information. Where does that come from? Not some cherry-picked group. Not some organization that was already against firearms. That comes from the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. To me, that's pretty amazing. 84% of states have lower violent crime rates in 2022 than they did before they had permitless carry. Overall, of the states that have passed constitutional carry since 2015, there's an average of a 2.88 per 100,000 people drop in violent crimes. Now, I can cherry pick states where it went way up, and I can cherry pick states where it went way down. I'm giving you the mean average. And if you go back and look at the states where they had the biggest increases in violent crimes, you will find reasons for that. Border states. Crime went way up there. I don't know what the math happens there, what happened, but figure it out. As we dig deeper into the statistics, states with the most relaxed open carry, 67% of concealed permitless carry states have a violent crime below national average. That's pretty significant. 67% of the states that went to permitless carry saw a drop in violent crime. Again, I could go back and cherry pick. I could pick my favorite states that had lower numbers. I'm not going to do that. Because when I cherry pick, I'm not giving you real significant data. Let's give you the real statistics across the 50 states. Highest crime rates in the United States are the two most restrictive. This is FBI, people. The two most restrictive on firearms, California and DC. When you go into the cities that are more restrictive, places like Detroit, crime goes up. Why? They know you don't have a gun to protect yourself. In fact, when we look at statistics, according to the FBI, over 2 million times per year, people defend themselves or their loved ones with a firearm. Then we talk about the age of people. As I said, a well-regulated militia was 18 years old, the age of majority. Now, if y'all want to change the age of majority, we can talk about that. We allow our young people to go off to war at 18 years old. We allow them to carry a gun in North Carolina today at 18 years old. Did you know that? Don't have to have a permit. Any 18-year-old, trained or not, from somebody that's yelling training in the audience, any 18-year-old who is not otherwise prohibited by law, meaning they're a felon or a drunkard or a drug addict, can openly carry a firearm. They can strap it on their hip and walk any place they want to that is not prohibited. So when you're concerned about, oh, all the 18-year-olds and they're crazy, they don't know what they're doing. I also find it odd that I've heard many of arguments where 18-year-olds should be able to do medical procedures and younger. I remember hearing that argument last year in Rules, just before this same bill came to the Rules Committee. 12 states currently allow 18-year-olds to carry concealed without a permit. One state allows it at 19. The balance of the 29 have higher ages. Ladies and gentlemen, criminals are going to violate the law. You can't make it more illegal to rob a bank. It's already illegal. You can't make it more illegal to murder somebody because it's already illegal. Now, we can turn to places like Australia where they totally ban guns. Everybody thought crime rate's going way down now.
Representative Gilwell, the gentleman's exceeded his time. The chair would ask him to wrap up his comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm about finished here. Australia's crime rate actually has gone up now, and murder rate has gone up. Ladies and gentlemen, this is about rights, freedom. It's about the Second Amendment. It's about your right under God to defend yourself, your loved ones, from whatever threatens you. I appreciate your green vote on the bill.
For what purpose? The gentleman from Chatham, Representative Reeves, rise.
To debate the bill.
The gentleman's recognized to debate the bill.
So I think the hardest thing that happens when we're in this building, and I would agree, is that we get a lot of statistics, we get a lot of discussion, and what I recognize is that one of the things we're always going to be able to do is if I have a position, I can find a statistic to back my position. I can find a group that will give me that opportunity. And you know, those of you that have served with me the last 11 years know I don't even like to debate on guns because the gun debate has become something about everything but what it should be. I want to make one central point about this bill very clear. This bill has nothing to do with, as we've heard earlier, the 100%. This bill is not making things easier or harder or anything of that sort on people who lawfully want to own guns. I want to reiterate what Representative Quick said because, and it may come from sitting with each other so long, we think so much in line. Everybody's a law-abiding citizen until they're not. And so I'm getting past the statistics, I'm getting past the emotion, I'm getting past the law enforcement officers that I talk to every day who, when I got here, they used to be the experts. And now suddenly, my law enforcement officers are no longer experts on weapons and protection. My military friends are no longer experts on protection and weaponry. And I've got to tell you, it is shocking how quickly that happens. You have got people who have dedicated their lives to taking care of us who have been intimidated into silence. So I'm not here to give you statistics. I am here to tell you what my gut says, because when it gets down to it, at some point when we're in this building, it becomes about our gut. It becomes about not worrying about what some social media troll is going to say, but it becomes about looking people in the face every day. And I sat and listened to Representative Clark, and I felt I would be less of a man not to stand up and tell her how much I feel those stories she talks about, because I am a UNC Chapel Hill graduate. And what you become at UNC Chapel Hill is part of a family, just like any college. And I remember Eve. And I think about when we were in college, because what we're debating now is not, you're right, 18-year-olds can already get a gun. But there's nothing like knowing somebody has that weapon if you're law enforcement. That's the difference between open carry and concealed carry. We're not fighting for somebody's rights here. It's like we've begun to, the gun debate has begun to just conflate everything. That if you say anything that quote unquote restricts a right, then suddenly you hate guns and you hate America and you hate the Constitution. As I listened to one of the debaters today list all of the circumstances where we tell people they can't have guns, there are a million of them. Then that means, yes, there are times that we think people shouldn't have guns. And it is, I'm not going to use the word I was getting ready to say. It is incredible to me when I hear somebody say, you can't stop me from wearing blue suits. But there are 15 places in the Constitution that say you can't wear blue suits. We have a job to make laws for the least of these. All of us in here, unfortunately, a lot of us, now there are a few of us that are younger. So we didn't grow up with the John Wayne, Clint Eastwood construct, where we all believe that, man, if I just had a gun, I would have stopped that. And that's not really true. I've prosecuted, and some of you have been in law enforcement. You know what never happens? You never have that story where the untrained, unknowledgeable person who has never been in that situation can make the right decision. You think it's easy to decide to take a life. But when I talk to law enforcement people, when I talk to men in the Army and women in the Army, you know what they will tell you? I want you to have that training because you need to know the responsibility that comes with what you're doing. They don't talk to me about abridging anybody's rights. They talk about the responsibility that comes. And do you know how many times I've sat in that courtroom and heard somebody who had a gun and froze? They freeze. And having a concealed gun isn't a deterrent. How do you deter somebody if they don't even know you have it? But what you do is you scare that police officer to death. That police officer is now walking up on an 18-year-old who's having some type of mental crisis, who's having some type of breakdown, who is this close to becoming this citizen or this person sitting in a jail cell. And now that officer's got one more thing on her or his plate. That person might be holding a concealed weapon. And that is what we're arguing about today, is do you look me in the face? And I know all of us know 18-year-olds, whether you have them or not. You're going to look me in the face and tell me that you feel good about an 18-year-old sitting around with a gun in her or his pocket? You can't tell me that every 18-year-old, because if you know nothing but good, responsible 18-year-olds, I thank God you didn't know me. And that is what we're talking about today. So there's some people right now that are on the fence because they've got people who will tell them they don't love the world, they don't love the Constitution, they don't love America. But they know in their hearts this is a bridge too far. You can fully support the Second Amendment and say, I don't want that 18-year-old kid walking around with a concealed weapon with no training. Remember, all these people are asking is that you get training. Training that every person I've ever talked to that has gone through it has said it meant the world for me to get that training. That is it. We, at some point, have to learn to govern. And we've been governing in this body, in this chamber, these 6 months. We have got to govern. And sometimes we've got to explain to people what our decisions are. Because we are the people they look to for responsibility. And I hear stats about, well, women have guns now, and more black people got guns now, and they still will. But the person I'm worried about is the person Representative Clark was talking about and the people that Representative Quick's talking about. And I'm going to tell you, it's interesting when somebody has been hit with that gun violence, how their position changes. And you can almost tell when you hear them talk the difference. So I ask you, when you make this decision, this isn't about constitutional carry. We've got the most beautiful titles I've ever seen for every bill we've got. It's beautiful because it feels like, man, I got to do this to support the Constitution. I can support every inch of that Constitution and say I don't want what I experienced 4 years ago when my daughter entered high school. She came home and collapsed. And I'm like, my God, what happened? Did somebody attack you? Did somebody do something to you? And they did the shooter training. And she said, I'm on the second floor of the building. There's nobody that can save me. And when a person walks into a building deciding they're going to kill people, I know who we think we are, but you don't know until you're in that moment. And when those officers come who have been trained and dedicated their lives to save me, I don't want any confusion for them. I want them to know who they need to seek out and go after. So I rose just to remind you, you can support every inch of the Second Amendment, everything about it, and not go this far today. We don't have to say yes every time somebody says the word gun. We just don't. But we have turned this into such a monstrosity in our world today, just hoping that this keeps people on our side. And I am telling you, if there is somebody who is a good, legal, responsible gun owner today, and they're confused about how to own a gun in North Carolina, I am happy for you to call me and talk to me. Because my Lord, if you're having a hard time getting a gun in North Carolina today, there are other people you're going to need to talk to. And I will leave you with this simple point. We have got to be the adults in the room. Not Democrats, not Republicans, not sides. The side we need to take are the side of the people. And all the people are asking us to do is that sometimes just help them with responsibility. So this isn't preaching about gun violence. This isn't preaching about any of that stuff. This is simply saying we can make everything that you're trying to have happen in a different way, but there've got to be rules. There's just got to be a line. And I will tell you, as somebody who has defended people charged with crimes and prosecuted people charged with crimes, let's be real clear about something. If you make every law up here based on the presumption, well, you know, criminals are going to do what they want anyway, then we might as well not have laws. I mean, really, why have laws then? Shoot, make every drug there is available, make every gun there is available, make everything you ever want to do in your worst day available, because criminals are going to do that anyway. I'm sorry, to me that's the worst excuse ever to pass a law, is criminals are going to do it anyway. That's why we got laws, and that's why we have two of the greatest forces in the history of the world in our law enforcement in America and our soldiers. And if my law enforcement and soldiers who are Republicans and gun owners are telling me you can't do this, we can't do this, and I ask you to vote no.
Question for the House is the passage of the Senate Committee Substitute Senate Bill 50 on second reading. All those in favor will vote aye. All those opposed will vote no. The clerk will open the vote. Clerk will lock the machine and record the vote. 60 having voted in the affirmative and 47 in the negative. The Senate Committee Substitute Senate Bill 750 having passed its second reading without objection be read a third time.
The General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
Question for the House is the passage of the Senate Committee Substitute Senate Bill 50 on its third reading. All those in favor will say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate Committee Substitute Senate Bill 50 having passed its third. The Sergeant at Arms will remove the lady who self-selected herself to be removed. The bill will be sent to the Senate. Strike that, and it'll be ordered. Strike that. That bill will actually be enrolled and sent to the governor. Members, we'll move on now to House Bill 811. The clerk will read.
Representatives Paré, Zinger, Tyson, and Moss. House Bill 811, a bill to be entitled CC Firearm Safety Instruction 18 and older. The General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
Wait, even wait. Members will be at ease momentarily. Representative Dew, Chair understands the lady wishes to switch her vote on the last vote to a no. So order, Mr. Clerk. The lady from Wake, Representative Perez, recognized to debate the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a great bill. I don't know why everybody's leaving. Members, this is a very short and straightforward bill. As a gun owner and Second Amendment supporter myself, I believe that firearm safety and firearm safety education is very, very important. And as this body has debated and subsequently passed Senate Bill 50 today, this is a positive action we can take now to make available comprehensive firearm safety instruction to any individual 18 years old and older. This bill would make available comprehensive firearm safety instruction at North Carolina community colleges to individuals 18 years old and older, and appropriates $1 million in general fund dollars recurring for the program. I look forward to a unanimous vote, hopefully, on this bill. It's very common sense. Thank you.
For what purpose is the lady from Wake, Representative Savania, rise?
To speak on the bill.
Ladies recognized to debate the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. HB 811 is a bill proposed for firearm safety courses in our community college, targeted at people who are 18 and older. At its core, I think we're all in agreement that this bill is trying to meet us where we all stand. An agreement that if people are going to own and carry firearms, they should know how to use them safely. This is our common ground. So I speak on this bill not necessarily to debate this bill, But let's be honest about where we are. In this same session, this body just voted on legislation, SB50, eliminating the concealed carry permit requirement. And under current law, and anyone who has family or yourself going through the concealed carry training to obtain a permit here in North Carolina, you know that there's already 8 hours of a safety course with live fire. But also, you submit a background check and disclose your permit status when you're approached by law enforcement. Those are sensible minimum safeguards endorsed by both responsible gun owners and law enforcement alike. So I have to ask, because I'm really confused, why are we proposing taxpayer-funded safety training for 18-year-olds while removing those very same requirements that we just, as a body, eliminated? This is not just inconsistent, it's confusing. We cannot, on one hand, say training is necessary enough to fund it with public dollars, and then the other hand say it's unnecessary to receive long-standing, proven concealed carry training and process. So if we truly want a course to be comprehensive, let's ensure that it addresses real-life risk that our constituents face. It should just not cover a clean barrel, but also it should prevent tragedies, as a lot of my colleagues here today have mentioned. And many of us, all of us, for the most part, are saying we support the Second Amendment. But rights, as it's been said, include responsibility. And our laws should reflect, I should say, clarity, consistency, and care. And those don't infringe on rights. They enforce responsibility. So again, here's the contradiction I want to put on record. We are funding a safety training while removing the requirement of any concealed carry training for everyone who wants to bear a concealed weapon. That's not just public safety. It's a policy gap, and we have a bill, and I'm not contesting it's right or wrong, but we need to have our community and all together be able to talk about what is going to be covered in this training. So I urge this body that we consider that we need to be serious about safety, but we also need to be serious about consistency. Safety should not just be an option. Training should not just be voluntary for some and discarded for others. And a firearm policy should not be reduced to slogans. So my vote today is for responsibility. Thank you.
What purpose does the gentleman from Wake, Representative Sheetzel, rise?
To debate the bill.
Gentleman's recognized to debate the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I feel compelled really quickly to say that I appreciate some of the discussion there toward the end of the last bill about the caricatured conversation that we have around our founding documents, that it's problematic that across the board, as someone who has lived and taught and practiced in the area of First Amendment, that it's difficult sometimes to listen to people talk about what they believe the founding document stands for rather than what has been in the historical record for a couple hundred years. I want to talk really briefly, and I'm sorry, I wrote down some notes, just kind of things I remember from teaching. There's a phrase that stuck in my head for, I don't know, probably a decade now since I first read it. And that phrase is confident pluralism. I read that in Justice Alito's dissent in the case Christian Legal Society v. Martinez, and that case was about a university's policy on student associations. Christian Legal Society had policies that it didn't extend membership to certain people that did not share the tenets of its faith, and that included members of the LGBTQ community. The school had adopted what it called an all-comers policy that required any organization to accept any member of that organization. I promise I'm getting back to the bill here in just a second, but I think this is a bit important to understand the background here. So CLS's policies excluded these members. The university said, we're not going to allow you to have a chapter here then. And this phrase, confident pluralism, that Alito used actually came from a brief written by the Gays and Lesbians for Individual Liberty, saying, you know, we appreciate what the university is trying to do here, but the First Amendment envisions a better way. It envisions a confident pluralism that conduces to civil peace and advances democratic consensus building. The Constitution allows us to do risky things. Edward Murrow famously said that we are not descended from fearful men, people who are afraid to use their First Amendment rights or their Second Amendment rights. And for Representative Kidwell, even people who choose to use the Article 5 Convention of States rights that we have in the Constitution. It allows us to do some risky things. But we're not a fearful nation. We are not a fearful culture. And these rights, as critically as important as they are, they can be risky. And so what's needed here is education. We should be an educated culture, one that understands the scope of our rights, one that understands the scope of our right to individual self-defense, to keep and bear arms. On Memorial Day, I told a group that the best way to vindicate these rights and to vindicate and honor our fallen service members is to live in a way that makes their sacrifice worth it, to exercise these rights in a way that is worth the price of them. I think this bill, this training, gets us closer to that. It's an important measure. I'm proud to support it. I'm proud to support what I would call a confident constitutionalism, and I urge your green vote on this bill. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Chatham, Representative Reeves, arise?
To debate.
You're recognized to debate the bill.
So I feel a little compelled to answer because, you know, I thought this would have been a good time for somebody, because we've had some folks call points of order and all that kind of stuff. I know I've gotten a couple this year. And I don't know how that discussion that we just had was relevant to the good bill that I'm voting for that Representative Paray is presenting. I will be the first to admit and acknowledge, guys, I'm a country lawyer. We don't have a lot of big stuff that comes through town. You know, I'll be just as likely to litigate a dog bite case as I will be to, you know, have something to help you with a speeding ticket. But I will say this about our interpretations of the Constitution. One of the things that I've learned, and again, being in the country, I think we got to deal with each other. And we've got to respect that people may have different views than we do. What I will never do is belittle your belief about what the Constitution says or does or any other legal document, just as Representative Kidwell and I have had spirited debates. I have never said, you don't know what you're talking about. I just said I disagree. I've never said you never know what you're talking about. So I would just say that going forward, I think that's a good idea for all of us. And if I have ever made anybody feel like that, I feel like you don't understand the Constitution by the way that I'm talking, I apologize, because I have not said that. What I have intended to say, and I am terrible with English because, again, I'm from the country. And so sometimes I don't know how to say, this is how I interpret what this law is doing. This is how I interpret the Constitution. So since we started talking about the Second Amendment, again, I will say I am happy to have a conversation about the words that I see in the Second Amendment. I will be happy to have a conversation about the words that I see in the First Amendment. I will be happy to have a conversation about how I feel we have applied those constitutional ideas in our thought processes. And again, this has nothing to do with Representative Paray's bill. I like your bill, and I think it's great, and I'm going to vote for it. But since we're just talking about everything we want to talk about, I thought I'd just get up here and just talk about what I wanted to talk about. So thank you.
Well, why not? The question for the House is the passage of House Bill 811 on its second reading. All in favor will vote aye. All opposed will vote no. The clerk will open the vote. Clerk will lock the machine, record the vote. 104 having voted in the affirmative and 1 in the negative. House Bill 811 has passed its third reading, and without objection, we read a third time. Second reading, excuse me, and will be read a third time.
The General Assembly of North Carolina
The
enacts.
question for the House is the passage of House Bill 811 on its third reading. All in favor will say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 811 has passed its third reading and will be sent to the Senate.